They say hard work always pays off, that if you keep your head down and give your all, someone will eventually recognize you. Emily Dawson believed that. For 4 years, she poured her soul into her job at Horizon Metrics, a startup nestled in the heart of Minneapolis, Minnesota. When she joined, they were just 11 employees sharing a cramped, overheated workspace above a bike repair shop. The walls were thin, the Wi-Fi unreliable, and their coffee maker wheezed more than it brewed. But Emily didn't mind. She saw possibility. Day after day, she stayed late, often skipping holidays and weekends, slowly building the company's data infrastructure from the ground up. Dashboards, forecasting tools, automated reporting systems, she touched it all. By the time Horizon expanded to a sleek, 2-story headquarters with glass walls and a private espresso bar, Emily had become the quiet backbone of it all. They called her the data whisperer. But never in the boardroom. She didn't network. She didn't play politics. She just delivered clean, reliable data, the kind that made investors lean in. She never asked for recognition. She believed her work would speak. But soon, Emily would learn that silence, in the wrong hands, is just an invitation to be erased. Emily Dawson had always believed that good work would eventually shine through. She wasn't the type to raise her voice or insert herself into executive meetings just to be seen. Her confidence lived in spreadsheets and scripts, in anomaly alerts and trend lines that she alone could decipher at 3 a.m. when everyone else was asleep. Her world was precise. She measured performance in metrics, progress in percentages. Her proudest achievement? A fully automated analytics pipeline that saved Horizon Metrics nearly $1.2 million in operating costs over 2 fiscal years. But none of that showed up in her paychecks. While new hires, mostly men who spoke with flair and presented half her work with twice the confidence, rose quickly through the ranks, Emily stayed stuck in the same role, senior data analyst, with the same polite, maybe next year, note from HR each performance cycle. Still, she told herself to wait. Her time would come. Until the morning she saw the announcement. Promoted. Alex Brenner. Head of Data Strategy. Alex, the one she trained. The one who once asked her what ETL meant during onboarding. He now had a team of 8 and a seat at leadership meetings. She had a corner cubicle, revoked permissions, and silence. Something cracked. Emily didn't rage. She did what she always did. She built. She spent a week compiling a detailed impact report, something not even the CEO could ignore. It documented every initiative she'd launched, every dashboard that guided product pivots, every decision informed by her systems. She even translated her contributions into revenue terms. $1.2 million retained. $430,000 saved in dev hours. 11% uptick in quarterly retention directly linked to her customer segmentation model. Her hands shook as she emailed it to Graham Lockhart, Horizon's CEO, a man known more for charismatic investor pitches than employee recognition. To her surprise, he replied almost immediately, "Let's meet during Q2 reviews. Just the two of us." She felt her heart leap. This was it. The morning of the meeting, she wore her best navy blazer, hair pinned back, the report printed and bound in her hand. Graham welcomed her with a politician's smile and gestured to a sleek chair across from his walnut desk. "I've been meaning to talk to you," he said. She exhaled, relief rushing in. Maybe he'd seen. Maybe it had all been worth it. But then his tone shifted. Leaning back, arms folded, he tilted his head and asked, "Emily, do you really think you deserve a higher salary?" Her throat dried instantly. Not because she lacked an answer, she had dozens, but because of the way he asked it, the venom laced in his voice. It wasn't curiosity, it was challenge, disdain. And before she could respond, Graham smirked and added, "You manage numbers, automate a few things. That's value. Sure, but it's not impact. Impact is about leadership." Emily's mind reeled. Was this man, who used her data to secure millions in funding, truly suggesting that she brought nothing more than automation scripts to the table? She forced a polite smile. She didn't push back, didn't argue. She simply nodded, stood, and left his office. But inside, something had fundamentally changed. He hadn't just dismissed her. He had erased her. The next morning, She received a terse email from HR. As part of Horizon's strategic reorg, you will transition to the Cross-Functional Innovation Task Force effective immediately. It sounded impressive, but there was no team, no meetings, no objectives, just a vague list of tasks like benchmark emerging trends and evaluate data stack alternatives. Her projects were handed to Alex. Her access revoked. Her name vanished from product meeting invites. Dashboards she had authored were now credited to data strategy. She became invisible. Still, Emily didn't fight back, not yet. She watched, she listened, she documented everything. And she saw what no one else did, the cracks forming in real time. Alex couldn't manage the pipelines. Reports were delayed. Forecasts contradicted themselves. Churn metrics were inconsistent across dashboards. One dataset even mislabeled returning users as new signups, inflating growth. No one noticed, or if they did, they stayed silent. At the next all hands, Graham stood on stage, praising the fresh direction of the data team. Arms wide, smile blinding. This is what happens when you put the right people in charge. Emily's blood chilled. She sat quietly at the back of the room, hands folded. That night, she pulled out her old personal laptop, the one from Horizon's early days when everything still ran on Google Sheets and caffeine. She logged into a private backup server she'd used back then and began copying what she could. Not sabotage, not yet, just self-preservation. Every line of code, every config file, every Slack message that showed her flagged issues ignored, every dashboard schema she designed. Every silent victory now buried under someone else's name. The next few weeks blurred. Emily arrived early, left late, but no one noticed. She was still listed on the company directory. Her badge still worked, but inside, she was already gone. Until one day, the thing she feared and expected happened. The retention dashboard broke. It misreported churn by 12%. The data hadn't updated in nearly a week. And Horizon was preparing for a major demo with Blue Ridge Ventures, a top-tier firm rumored to be considering an $18 million Series B investment. The exec team scrambled. Emails pinged every second. Urgent. Missing Q4 data. Emily, are you online? Please jump on a call. Critical issue. Then a direct message from Graham. Need your help. Can discuss compensation. She didn't reply immediately. She let him sweat. And when she did answer, it was with precision. Happy to assist, on condition of restored ownership, new title, and written acknowledgement of prior contributions. Otherwise, I bear no liability. The silence that followed was louder than applause. But Emily wasn't done. She had one final card to play. And the game, one she never wanted to play, had just shifted in her favor. The following morning, the office felt different, not visibly. The standing desks still hummed. The espresso machine still hissed, but there was a current under the surface. Like the quiet before a storm. People moved faster. Their footsteps clipped. Conversations turned into whispers when Emily walked by. Her Slack lit up constantly. Emily, quick question on the retention job? Hey, not sure if you've seen this log error. Can you hop on a quick Zoom? She ignored them all. By mid-morning, her inbox dinged with a formal invite. Emergency review session 5 p.m. Executive team plus Emily Dawson. No subject, no agenda, but the meaning was clear. Damage control. Emily spent the day in silence. She didn't smile, didn't volunteer help, but behind her calm eyes was a storm of calculation. Because while Horizon Metrics was unraveling on the surface, she held every thread, quietly, deliberately. She had already cloned the core environment to a private sandbox, preserving logs, schema changes, and a complete access trail. Not to harm, but to protect herself. Because she knew how this played out. She'd seen it before, in whispers from other women in tech, in LinkedIn posts that felt too familiar. Too raw. They don't always fire you. Sometimes, they erase you. At 5:07 p.m., she joined the video call. Late on purpose, her face appeared on screen, calm, composed, unreadable. Graham Lockhart looked tired, his usual charisma dulled. Alex Brenner sat beside him, sweat visible along his collar, posture too rigid to be confident. 3 other executives were on the call. including Melissa Cho, the company's COO, and Don Weaver, Horizon's top legal counsel. "Thank you for joining," Melissa began. Her voice was clipped. "Practiced, as you know. We're facing a critical reporting failure ahead of investor review. We'd appreciate your insight." Emily nodded, then clicked Share Screen. "I've prepared a walkthrough," she said simply. No pleasantries, no small talk. She walked them through the problem in surgical detail. The automation pipeline used an outdated API token, never rotated since her last alert, 8 months ago. The job scheduler had an expiry date that no one had noticed because no one had reviewed her documentation. The fallback logic failed because the dependencies weren't maintained. Every point she raised had been flagged. In Slack, in emails, in Jira tickets. She pulled them all up. Dates, screenshots, ignored responses, Alex's emoji replies. "Here's the problem," she said, voice low and clear. "You didn't just remove me from my role, you removed the only person who understood what held this system together." Graham tried to interject, but Emily continued. "You thought because I wasn't loud, I wasn't leading, but what I built required constant, deliberate upkeep. You gave it to someone who didn't understand the foundation and treated it like a plug-and-play system." The silence was heavy. Then, Melissa leaned forward. "What do we need to do, right now, to fix it?" Emily paused. She could hear her own heart beating. Then, "You can't fix this with a patch. You need a rebuild. The system is unstable, the trust is broken, and the people you need to lead this don't feel safe speaking up." Graham folded his hands. "Emily, we want to make this right. Let's talk compensation. A revised title. Equity, if needed." But Emily was already shaking her head. "I'm not negotiating with someone who asked if I deserve a raise days ago. I'm speaking to the future of your company. And unless this team is ready to acknowledge what you did wrong, I'm not interested." Then she clicked off her screen share and stood. "I'll leave you to discuss." She ended the call. That night, Emily returned to her apartment and sat in the dark. Her laptop glowed on the coffee table. Unread messages blinking in the corner. She didn't open them. Instead, she scrolled through her anonymous archive, a folder she'd compiled over months. Horizon_failures. Data_issues. Slack_receipts. Ignored_warnings. And finally, silent_system_collapse. Timeline. Doc. Access_log_capture.csv. They knew. .txt. It was all there. Every missed signal, every red flag waved by one person, ignored by many. She didn't plan to release it. Not yet, but it sat there, a weapon forged from facts. Just in case. The next morning, Emily entered the office to find something she hadn't expected: fear. Not from her, from them. Alex barely looked up from his desk. Graham's office door was shut. Blinds drawn. A group of junior analysts huddled nervously around a whiteboard, muttering about data accuracy and rollback options. Slack was buzzing again, her name tagged constantly. "Emily, can we loop you in? Emily, are you available for a quick sync?" She replied to none of them. Instead, she forwarded a file, a clean, professional summary, to Melissa Cho and Don Weaver. Proposal: System Stability and Leadership Restoration. It included a plan to restore data systems, a restructure of the data team under her direction. Her desired title: Director of Data Integrity and Infrastructure. Back pay: a public company-wide acknowledgement of the silent laborers who built the backbone of Horizon. She ended it with one sentence. "Silence isn't the absence of voice. It's the choice to wait until people are ready to listen." 10 minutes later, Melissa responded. "Let's meet. 3 p.m. You'll have everything you asked for." Emily closed her laptop and sat back. It wasn't revenge. She wasn't interested in humiliation or power plays. What she wanted was to reclaim her place in the story, not as a cautionary tale, but as proof that building in silence doesn't mean you have no power. It means when the noise dies down, yours is the voice that echoes. And the storm, the one they thought had passed, had only just begun. By the time the clock struck 3 p.m., Emily Dawson stood in front of the executive suite, holding nothing but a notebook and the weight of 4 years' worth of ignored brilliance. She didn't fidget. She didn't smile. She had already done the most powerful thing a person in her position could do. She made herself impossible to ignore. When she entered the room, it wasn't the silence that struck her. It was the respect. Melissa Cho stood to greet her. Don Weaver nodded from the far corner. A representative from the board, Kendrick Lyle, joined via video, his presence sending a clear signal. This meeting mattered. Graham Lockhart wasn't there. Emily took her seat. She didn't waste time. Before we talk about logistics, she said calmly, I need to know if the leadership here understands what really went wrong. Melissa folded her hands. We do now. But Emily held her gaze. Say it. Melissa blinked, then nodded. You were excluded. Your contributions were minimized. And we allowed someone unqualified to take credit for your work because he was louder and fit the image of what we thought leadership should look like. Don cleared his throat. We've reviewed your documentation. We've spoken to multiple team members. The loss of system integrity was preventable, if we had listened. Emily let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. It wasn't about ego. It was about truth. For the first time, someone had said it aloud. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't too sensitive. She had been right. And that changed everything. In the weeks that followed, the transformation wasn't immediate, but it was seismic. The official announcement came on a Monday morning. We are proud to welcome back Emily Dawson as our new Director of Data Integrity and Infrastructure. Emily will oversee the company's most critical systems and play a key role in rebuilding trust both internally and externally. It was short, direct, and most importantly, public. Her inbox flooded with messages. From engineers she'd barely spoken to. You deserved this a long time ago. From junior analysts. Thank you for showing us what quiet strength looks like. From old teammates. I always knew it was you holding us together. But the most surprising message came from Nina Lopez, her former peer and one of the only people who had tried to check in during the darkest stretch. They're finally seeing you, but we always did, Emily replied with a simple line. Let's build something better, together. As the days passed, Emily began stepping into her new role, but something had shifted inside her. Before, she had believed that staying quiet, staying humble, was the noble path. That if she just worked harder, someone would eventually notice. But now she understood the truth. Silence is powerful, but it must be chosen, not forced. She no longer spoke last in meetings. She didn't downplay her ideas. She didn't allow others to rephrase her contributions and stamp their names on it. And when she saw someone else being overlooked, especially the quiet ones, she pulled them in. Gave them credit, made them visible. One afternoon, while reviewing the newly proposed analytics framework, a junior engineer named Maya hesitated before suggesting a change. Emily leaned forward. Walk me through it. Maya's hands shook slightly as she scrolled to her diagram. But when she finished, Emily smiled and said, You just saved us 4 hours of processing time per cycle. Present it at the next stand-up. I'll back you. The next week, Maya did, and was met with applause. Later that day, Maya whispered to her in the hallway. No one's ever let me talk in front of execs before. Emily replied, That's their loss. Let's make sure it doesn't happen again. And in that moment, Emily saw it clearly. She wasn't just rebuilding systems anymore. She was rebuilding culture. One Friday morning, as she prepared for a quarterly update presentation, Emily opened her personal inbox to find a message she didn't expect. Subject: Panel invite. Women in Tech. Building what no one sees. From Elena Fong, investor, Iron Peak Capital. Emily, we'd be honored if you'd speak on our panel next month. We've followed your story closely. You're exactly the kind of leader we want young women to hear from. Emily stared at the screen. She wasn't a speaker. She didn't like the spotlight. But the panel's title echoed something deep within her. Building what no one sees. That had been her life. Her legacy. Her battle. She replied with one word. Yes. As the event drew near, Emily reflected on everything she had endured. Not just the betrayal, the pip, the sidelining, but the years of invisibility. The subtle dismissals. The praise that never came. She thought of every silent builder she had met in her career. The women who stayed late to run QA tests. The analysts whose reports drove million-dollar decisions yet went uncredited. The engineers who were told they weren't leadership material because they didn't brag. And she realized something. She had become the person she once needed. At the panel, she didn't wear anything flashy, just black jeans, a clean blazer, and quiet conviction. She sat in the third seat, between a startup founder and a professor from MIT. When her turn came, the moderator asked, "Can you give an example of how being overlooked helped you see something others couldn't?" Emily didn't hesitate. "Yes, being overlooked forced me to understand systems deeply, not just the ones in code, but the ones in people. I saw who got credit, who got silenced, who got passed over because they weren't loud enough. I learned how power operates in silence, and how to reclaim it without screaming." The room was quiet, then rippled with applause. That night, Emily didn't go home feeling victorious. She felt anchored. She had once been erased. Now, she was writing the next chapter, in bold. It started with a message in her LinkedIn inbox. Subject: exploring a collaboration. From Nate Harlan, VP of Product, Luminate AI. Hi Emily. I've followed your work at Horizon for a while. And I recently caught the panel you did on building what no one sees. We're at a critical junction at Luminate AI, scaling fast. Data pipelines cracking under pressure. And frankly, we need someone who doesn't just build systems, but understands what's behind them. Would you be open to a conversation about helping us architect something better, from scratch? Emily read the message 3 times. Luminate AI wasn't just any company. They were one of the fastest growing AI platforms in the country, Series C funded, expanding internationally, and known for trying to do things differently. But more than that, Nate Harlan was one of the rare execs in tech who actually listened. She remembered how he called out the invisible labor of women engineers in an industry article last year, the kind of call-out no one made unless they truly believed it. She replied, "Happy to connect, let me know when." 2 days later, they met for coffee in a quiet spot downtown. No suits, no slides, just 2 people who knew what it was like to fight fires in silence. Nate didn't waste time. "I'm not offering a job," he said. "I'm offering a blueprint, and the freedom to build it your way. No patchwork, no politics. You'd have full autonomy, team selection, architecture, long-term vision. You'd set the foundation." Emily raised an eyebrow. "What makes you think I'd leave Horizon after everything?" He smiled. "Because I don't think you stayed to win. I think you stayed to prove something. And now that you've proved it, maybe you're ready to build something that's yours from the beginning." Emily didn't respond right away, but his words echoed in her chest. Something that's yours. That night, she walked through Horizon's now quiet office, the same floors where she once sat invisible, where she had watched others present her work, where she had typed her resignation letter in her head a dozen times. She passed by Alex's old desk. Vacant. He had resigned a week earlier. Rumor had it he took a job in marketing at a wellness startup. Grant's corner office, now replaced by a shared collaboration space. Per Emily's request, she didn't want glass walls between leadership and the people who actually held the company together. But as she stood in front of the data wall, a massive digital display showing live metrics she'd helped build years ago, she realized something. This company had changed, but so had she. She was no longer staying out of loyalty. She was staying out of legacy. And now it was time to choose what kind of legacy she wanted to leave next. The official offer from Luminate AI arrived a week later. Title: VP of Data Strategy and Systems Architecture. Equity stake. Hybrid build your own team structure. Full ownership of a greenfield project. 1-year runway to build a new integrated pipeline from product analytics to forecasting. But it wasn't the title that moved her. It was the clause buried on page 4. This role exists to empower the unseen builders, and ensure no voice is lost in the data. Emily signed the offer on a Friday afternoon. Her goodbye at Horizon wasn't dramatic. No speeches, no parties, just a short message she posted on the company Slack. "Some of you know my story here. Some of you lived it beside me. What I'll remember most are the moments where we fought silently, fixed systems no one saw, and made things work when we shouldn't have had to. I leave knowing we changed this place, not by shouting, but by refusing to disappear. Thank you for helping me stay visible. One by one, the reactions trickled in. Hooray, yellow heart, hands clapping, fire. And a message from Nina. Wherever you go, they'll be lucky to have you. Keep making noise with your silence. At Luminate AI, Emily started small. Just her and a whiteboard in a sunlit room with no org chart. No red tape, no inherited chaos. But this time, she made rules. Every dashboard had a builder name credited. Every promotion cycle required a peer recognition report. Every system included contributor logs, so no one could ever claim credit for something they didn't touch. She hired slowly, deliberately, people like Maya from Horizon. People from her network who had been ghosted, passed over, silenced. She called them the quiet rebuilders. Together, they built not just a data system, but a workplace rooted in respect. One day, Nate passed by her desk and asked, "How's it going?" Emily smiled. "We're building something loud enough that it won't need to shout." And here's the thing. She never planned to become a voice in the industry. She didn't care about panels or podcasts or articles. But the story? The one she never meant to tell? It lived its own life. One of her former teammates anonymously shared part of her Horizon documentation, the timeline of system collapse, the restoration plan, and the silent protocols she had set in motion. It went viral again. LinkedIn called her the invisible architect. For the first time in her life, Emily didn't win quietly. She won visibly. But more importantly, she didn't just build systems anymore. She built futures. 6 months into her role at Luminate AI, Emily Dawson no longer second-guessed herself when she spoke. She no longer looked down before entering a boardroom. She didn't shrink in meetings or rehearse how to phrase her insights to sound more approachable. She had unlearned the survival tactics she once believed were necessary, smiling to be liked, staying quiet to avoid conflict, over-preparing to compensate for being underestimated. And now, she was rebuilding herself the same way she rebuilt systems, methodically, layer by layer. From the inside out, her team, the Quiet Rebuilders, had become more than just a nickname. It was a movement. Every one of them had a story like hers. One had been passed over for promotion 5 times despite mentoring the person who replaced them. Another had seen their entire project get redirected, only to watch someone else present it at a company all hands. A third had been told they lacked leadership presence because they didn't interrupt others in meetings. They didn't want revenge. They wanted recognition, room to breathe, and space to build without having to scream for attention. And under Emily's leadership, they were thriving. One afternoon, Maya, the engineer from Horizon, poked her head into Emily's office. "Got a minute?" "Always," Emily said. Maya hesitated. "It's weird, but this is the first time I've been in a place where I don't feel like I have to prove I belong every single day. I don't think I realized how heavy that weight was until it wasn't there." Emily smiled. "It's not weird. It's rare, but we're going to make it normal." That night, Emily wrote in her notebook, something she hadn't touched since her last night at her sister's cabin months ago. Power isn't control, it's clarity. Leadership isn't volume, it's visibility. But growth isn't linear. There were still moments when she flinched at sudden Slack messages from leadership, expecting conflict. Still nights when she questioned whether she was too bold, too direct, too much. Years of self-erasure didn't vanish overnight. One Friday, Luminate's CEO, Ravi Sen, invited her to join the company's executive offsite. Just 7 people, including VPs and department heads. She almost said no. She told herself she was too busy, too focused. But the truth was deeper. She wasn't sure she belonged in that room. But that weekend, she went. The offsite was held at a quiet retreat lodge in Lake Tahoe. No signal, no slides, just whiteboards, open windows, and long walks between discussions. On the second day, Ravi asked a simple but dangerous question. "What's one belief about leadership you've had to unlearn?" Emily hesitated. The others spoke first. Vision, delegation, strategy. When it was her turn, she stood up and walked to the whiteboard. She wrote, "That if no one sees you, it must mean you're not enough." Silence. Then she added, "Beneath it, you can be essential and invisible. But that's not sustainable." And it's not leadership. Leadership is not hiding your value, it's teaching others how to see it. Ravi nodded slowly. You just wrote the thesis for this company. After the offsite, something shifted again. Not externally, she already had the respect, the title, the authority, but inside, Emily no longer just carried leadership. She embodied it. She started mentoring beyond her team, offering quiet one-on-ones to employees across departments. People gravitated toward her not because she spoke the loudest, but because she heard them. And she became the kind of leader people didn't just follow, they believed in. Then came the invitation. A major tech conference in Seattle was hosting a keynote panel titled, Rewriting the Rules of Recognition. They wanted Emily as the opening speaker. Solo, 15 minutes, a spotlight. Her first reaction was to decline. The spotlight still made her nervous. She liked systems. She liked function. She didn't need applause. But then she remembered. There were people out there, still unseen, waiting for someone like her to stand up so they'd know it was safe to do the same. So she said yes. The auditorium was packed. Hundreds of faces, most of them women. Non-binary folks, early career engineers, analysts, project leads, people who had built product roadmaps, debugged critical failures at 2 a.m., saved companies from collapse, and still been left off the slide decks. When Emily stepped on stage, she didn't open with slides. She opened with this. I used to believe that if I was quiet and excellent, someone would notice. They didn't. But when everything I built started to fall apart without me, they noticed. And I realized something. Being quiet doesn't protect you. It only delays the moment you're forced to prove you mattered all along. She spoke of silence, not as a weakness, but as a choice, a strategy, a way to survive when no one gives you a microphone. And how the moment you find your voice, it doesn't have to be loud. It just has to be undeniable. The audience stood before she even finished. After the talk, dozens lined up to speak with her. A young black engineer said, I thought I was broken because I'm not like them. But I'm like you. And that's the first time that felt like enough. A middle-aged woman whispered, I've been in tech 22 years. Today was the first time I saw myself on that stage. Emily didn't cry on stage. She never cried in public. But that night, in her hotel room, she sat by the window and let it come. Quietly, powerfully. Not grief. Release. She was no longer invisible. Not to them. Not to herself. 3 weeks after her keynote in Seattle, Emily Dawson walked through the doors of Luminity's headquarters and was met with something she hadn't anticipated: applause. It wasn't dramatic. No standing ovation. No balloons. Just her team, her peers, scattered across the open workspace, pausing to look up from their laptops, clapping slowly, genuinely. Maya grinned. Welcome back, boss. Emily laughed and shook her head. It was just a talk. No, Maya replied. It was a message. And we heard it. Later that day, she received a handwritten note from Ravi, the CEO. What you've built here is more than a data framework, it's a leadership framework. We don't follow your systems because they work. We follow you because you make people believe they matter. That's real impact. She kept the note in her drawer. Not for pride, for proof. The more she grew into this new chapter, the more Emily understood. Her journey had never really been about the systems, the dashboards, the architecture. It was about visibility. And not just for herself, for everyone who had ever whispered an idea, saved a team, or solved a crisis and received nothing but silence in return. She became intentional about her visibility. Every internal presentation she gave included contributor credits. Every quarterly review included a segment called Silent Wins, where unseen work was acknowledged publicly. She pushed to revamp Luminate's promotion criteria, replacing vague leadership qualities with evidence of mentorship, collaboration, and system-level thinking. And her proudest moment wasn't a launch or a metric. It was the day a shy, brilliant developer named Jaden told her, I used to think I had to act like someone else to succeed. Then I watched you be you, and I realized I could just be myself. That was it. That was legacy. Emily didn't forget where she came from. She stayed in touch with former teammates at Horizon. She mentored young analysts entering the field. She started an invite-only support group called The Quiet Engine. where women and marginalized folks in tech shared their experiences of being overlooked and rebuilt one another with stories, strategies, and solidarity. And something beautiful began to happen. They stopped apologizing for not being loud. They stopped asking for permission to lead. They started designing cultures instead of just surviving them. At a conference in New York, an executive recruiter approached Emily after a panel. "We'd love to have you as Chief Data Officer at a Fortune 500 fintech," he said. "Big salary, big visibility." Emily smiled politely. "I'm already building something bigger," she said, "a system where no one has to prove they're worthy of being seen." He looked confused, but she didn't explain. She didn't need to. One rainy evening, Emily revisited her old notebook, the one from her weekend at the cabin. Back then, she had written in desperation. Now, she wrote in certainty. "They tried to erase me, but I became the blueprint." She had rebuilt not just a system, but a standard. She didn't fight for a seat at the table. She redesigned the table, one where credit flowed horizontally, not upward. Success wasn't measured in volume but in value. Silence wasn't dismissal, it was strategic. Months later, a viral article surfaced on Medium titled, "The Era of the Invisible Architect: How Quiet Leadership is Reshaping Tech." It didn't name her, but it was unmistakably about her. About the fall of Horizon, the quiet rebuild at Luminate, the people she lifted, the culture she flipped. The comments flooded in. "I'm Zoe. This happened to me. I cried reading this. Thank you. They can't ignore us anymore." She didn't reply, but she read every word. And then, one day, the email came. Subject: "Emily, would you consider writing a book?" From Harper and Avery Publishers. She laughed out loud when she read it. The girl who used to fear speaking up was now being asked to write loudly. She didn't say yes, not right away, but she didn't delete the email either. Because maybe it was time. Maybe the world needed to hear from the quiet ones. The ones who built everything, and were told to stand in the shadows. Maybe now, she would shine light for them all. The most powerful lesson Emily Dawson learned was this: silence is not weakness, but it must be a choice, not a sentence. For years, she believed that working hard and staying invisible would earn her respect. But in reality, silence without visibility often leads to erasure. It wasn't until everything she built began to fail without her that people finally saw her worth. True leadership doesn't always come in loud voices or bold declarations. Sometimes, it's the quiet ones who hold entire systems together, not just in tech, but in every corner of the world. The ones who fix problems before others notice. Who teach by doing. Who build without credit. Emily didn't become powerful because she raised her voice. She became powerful because she stopped letting others write her out of the story. And in doing so, she rewrote what leadership looks like, for everyone watching in silence. If you've ever felt overlooked, underestimated, or erased, know this: you're not alone. Like Emily, your value may not always be visible, but that doesn't make it any less real. Document your work. Speak up, even when it's hard. Advocate for others who are being sidelined. And most of all, don't wait for permission to lead. In your workplace, start creating visibility systems, public acknowledgements, peer recognition, open mentorship. If leadership won't see you, build a spotlight for others and step into it together. You don't have to be the loudest voice to be heard. You just have to speak with clarity, and never let silence be mistaken for surrender. Thank you for choosing to listen to this story among thousands of stories out there. Like and subscribe to continue listening to the latest stories.